I want to talk a little about the role of walking routes in recent fiction, and so I thought it would be appropriate to do this while taking a walk with you. I'm going to give some examples from W.G. Sebalt's The Rings of Saturn a little later, but let's look at the general idea first. If you mapped the places and routes in the novels of the pre-industrial age, you'd see patterns like linear trajectories, concentric circles, and maybe binary fields. And these places were usually accessible by foot. But now foot travel is much less central to our experience. You might say it's somewhat novel. So how does this manifest in fiction? I think that some of the most important fiction doesn't take those standard forms, but rather it meanders. The routes are indeterminate. This is important for two reasons. First, because it's an accurate description of the state of affairs in which we don't know the course of global climate change, and it's an invitation for the reader to participate in the project. To understand the Anthropocene, people are going to have to be able to envision vast stretches of time and distant geographies, to know that those distant places have been and are being altered by man, and yet to finally recognize that the ways they're changing are beyond man's ability to control or predict. In The Rings of Saturn, the meander form allows Sebald to free associate while collapsing far-flung places and epochs into poetic descriptions of what ostensibly lies right before his eyes. Let's see how this works. The central action of Rings of Saturn, such as it is, involves a short trip through southeastern England. Sebald calls this a pilgrimage, but that's sort of misleading. The action takes place over several meandering walks, and these meandering paths don't merely facilitate observations, they're intertwined with them. I'll read a short passage. This is from Michael Hulza's translation. A quarter of an hour's walk south on Benacre Broad, where the beach narrows and a stretch of sheer coastline begins. A few dozen dead trees lie in a confused heap, where they fell years ago from the clove-hithe cliffs. Bleached by salt water, wind, and sun, the broken, barkless wood looks like the bones of some extinct species, greater even than the mammoth and dinosaurs, that came to grief long since on this solitary strand. The footpath leads around the tangle, through a bank of gorse, up to the loamy cliff head, and there it continues amidst bracken, the tallest of which stood as high as my shoulder, not far from the ledge, which is constantly threatening to crumble away. So what was Sebald doing there? Well, the path shows, first, the disorder of climate change, and asks us to imagine an indefinite past. It asks us to think of the fate of other life forms. It asks us to speculate on the cause of that fate. It suggests a physical unity between man and other species, and it reminds us that the present and future are caught up in an unavoidable process of destruction similar to that which brought down those long ago extinct life forms. So this was just a little introduction to the kinds of readings that we have throughout this entire blog. Please look around, walk around if you will, and let us know what you think. Thanks!